While we don't have an update with anything going on with Judge McAfee or the courtroom decision on the Fani Willis disqualification hearing, we do have an interesting update about how the Fulton County keeps its database and keeps its records and some other implications about civil forfeiture funds. So, Fulton County speaks out over Fani Willis payments to Nathan Wade. This was published on March 11th and it was updated today, and I noticed as I was recording this video, they went and updated and included something new that I was thinking about yesterday in relation to the YSL RICO trial. Let's get into it, but as a quick summary, what we're going to be talking about is Ashley Merchant at the Senate Special Investigations Committee hearing had mentioned, hey, there's these 3 payments that went to Nathan Wade from Fulton County that were paid out from the civil forfeiture fund. And that's like a no-no. What's going on there? So let's see what Newsweek has to share with us. Ashley Merchant, attorney for Trump's co-defendant Michael Roman, said in court documents that Wade's first 3 months of work as a special prosecutor were paid from the district attorney's seized property fund. A spokesperson for the Fulton County government subsequently told Newsweek that this claim was demonstrably false. Newsweek later showed the spokesperson, we're probably going to get something different here than demonstrably false. So, the spokesperson entries from the district attorney's expense count, which recorded payments to Wade from the seized property account in July, August, and September 2020. And I do think we have an error with the date here because we are talking about the first months that Nathan Wade was special prosecutor, all for sums over $30,000. The spokesperson said these entries were an error. Now, if the database is the error, if that's where the mistake is, it's not demonstrably false for someone to say, hey, I looked at the public records and this is what they said. Right? So, to maintain transparency, payments to lawyers should not be made from a confiscated property account, but from a general or legal fund. The spokesperson told Newsweek on Monday that the open expense account draws off a database maintained by Fulton County government, not the district attorney's office. We're not able to assess why a data entry was made in the database maintained by them. In court documents and in testimony, Merchant said that Fulton County's own record showed payments to Wade from the confiscated property account. So in other words, she accurately reported what she saw in the public records, but the public records, according to the spokesperson, were not accurate. Now, this is where they added an update, and it's what I was thinking about yesterday. So Newsweek says here, confiscated property held by the Fulton County DA's office includes, for example, $150,000 in cash and $1 million worth of jewelry seized from the rapper Young Thug when he was arrested in May 2022 on organized crime, the RICO charges. Paying lawyers from the forfeited property account would be inappropriate for any district attorney's office. Now, pin this, we're going to circle back to this. In admitting the clerical error, the spokesman included an email from Willis's chief operation officer, who noted that the expense documents prepared by the Fulton County government incorrectly states that invoices 9, 10, and 11 were paid out of a forfeiture account. So, this is invoices 9, 10, and 11, not the first payments going to Nathan Wade. So you've got a little bit of a confusing bubble going on with how this is being reported. The chief operating officer attached 3 memos for the payments, which he said showed that they were pulled from the general account rather than the confiscated property fund. So they end up attaching 3 separate memos about these 3 payments to say, hey, by the way, this is just incorrectly noted here. It's not from the confiscated property fund. It is from the general fund. Now, this is where, when I said pin this is why I think a light bulb also went off for Newsweek yesterday for the author of this. And they said, hold on a minute. Hold on. Remember, we're talking about Fulton County, home to Atlanta. There's a lot of money in this county. And there's crime that involves money, right? Well, before they added this part in here, because a light bulb must have went off for them too. This part here says, in addition, the chief operating officer provided several reasons why the money would not come from the forfeiture account, including that the DA's office has a state and federal forfeiture accounts and only holds the money in the account. The funds in the Georgia confiscated funds account are always kept low and would never be able to make payments of over $30,000 a month to a lawyer. But in just one civil forfeiture, one seizure of Jeffery Williams' property, they took $150,000 in liquid cash. That's not even including, those are physical objects, this jewelry and all this other stuff. But $150,000, it was $149 and some change, barely rounded up. That's enough to make 3 payments of $30,000. So this paragraph was not here in this article yesterday, but this paragraph was, where the chief operating officer says, hey, that couldn't have happened anyway, because it just would be impossible. We don't have money that totals over $30,000 in that account. It wouldn't be possible to pay someone a $30,000 invoice out of that account, even as a mistake. Well, I think a light bulb went off for Newsweek, just like it did for me, because they've had that liquid money seized by just one individual before. It goes on to speak about what's going on with the disqualification hearing more generally. The relationship timeline, blah, 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 invoices. And again, here they're getting it right that the invoices start in November 1st and have extended through the present, and that the $30,000 a month first started in 2022 and have mostly stayed that way since. So I think this is important to show that with that 2020, with Fulton County payments at the beginning of this article, they probably meant 2022, but who knows? We've got an article about typographical clerical errors having a typo that kind of makes a big difference in context. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. But I did want to jump over. It was actually the All Hip Hop blog that did the exclusive. They had pulled the court filing by Brian Steele, Young Thug's attorney, back in September 2022, where Brian Steele was making an argument against the civil forfeiture of Jeffery Williams' property. They give the figure here from the documents. Authorities seized $149,426 liquid cash in U.S. currency. Officers also took firearms, several vehicles, including a Corvette and a Porsche. 87 pieces of jewelry, pendants, necklaces, earrings, all of that. And then a jeweler that claimed that they had loaned a bunch of jewelry out to Young Thug to use, as promotional items. You let someone wear your work, you get a lot of notoriety for it. So this jeweler, a New York jeweler, Raffaello and Company, came out and was like, hey, you've seized all this property for Young Thug, but some of that was stuff that was on loan to Young Thug by us. So it's our property, and you should give that back. But officials denied this. They said, of the 9 jewelry pieces which Raffaello and Company asserts to own and to have lent Mr. Williams, only 4 pieces resemble any of the pieces of jewelry seized on May 9th, 2022. The other 5 pieces of jewelry do not resemble any of the pieces of jewelry seized on May 9th. My major point here is I think they made a big oopsie by saying that their civil forfeiture fund wouldn't ever have an amount over $30,000 in Fulton County. Fulton County, this is not the Young Thug trial having Young Thug have his property seized. That's not the first time that someone with a lot of money and a lot of valuables has had their cash and their belongings seized in Fulton County. So why would the chief operating officer come out and say, hey, we never have that amount of money in this type of account anyway? Civil forfeiture has been a huge issue at the SCOTUS level. So back in 2019, in a decision that was unanimous, it was 9-0, the Supreme Court ruled that the excessive fines clause, the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, prohibits the imposition of excessive fines, and even though it traditionally only applied to the federal government with civil forfeiture, in this ruling, they agreed unanimously that it does actually apply equally to the states and civil forfeitures. So it's a big win for property rights, individuals' rights over their own property, protections against excess fees and fines. And since this ruling, civil forfeiture has been a more contentious issue than ever before. So if you're hoping for some new sparring between, Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, any of the co-defendants, or their attorneys like Ashley Merchant, sorry that I don't have that for you here. There's no new sparring to take a look at and get some entertainment out of. But I think we're touching on a very interesting issue where we have this chief operations officer saying, hey, civil forfeiture, we barely do that. Don't look at us for that. We don't have anything that would come close to paying out $30,000 from that fund. Civil forfeiture, separate from this case, is a huge, huge controversial issue. And it's not something that just affects people with a lot of money. It's something that if you get pulled over and you're charged with a petty crime and they decide to seize your property on you, it could be the only cash, the last cash you've got on you. And then they can hold it for, indefinite periods of time. There's a lot of issues about the process of how civil forfeiture works and how you can try to get your belongings back. So I just ultimately think it's really interesting that Fulton County, the COO, was like, we never have an amount that's over $30,000 in Fulton County. But let me know. The floor is yours. Do you think we're going to get a decision from Judge McAfee this Friday on time? Do you think, and what do you think that decision might be? Do you think that there's like something funky about the way the COO And I'm not trying to lead you into agreeing with my opinion here, but does anything stick out to you about that statement about the civil forfeiture fund and the amount that would never be in it? And if you have any general opinions on civil forfeiture, seizure of property in the course of a criminal investigation, what are your thoughts on it? Where do we draw the line in the sand on what's acceptable to seize property for versus, that's an overreach. That's an overreach. And might need some type of fixing or improvement as a system. If you have any other thoughts related to anything, just let me know. You guys have a great day, and if there's another update that comes up, we can talk about it. Take care until next time.